We've been receiving messages from anonymous people who claim to work for the U.S. Forest Service, saying there have been mass firings of anyone who was in their probationary period, as well as job offers that were sent before the freeze that have been rescinded. This includes wildland firefighters. To your knowledge, what are the validity of these claims?
Well, first of all, I want to open that, the work that DOJ and the administration has been doing to try and find fraud, the abuse in our the spending that the federal government is doing. They found so much, like in the Social Security system, of people that aren't eligible, USAID money going overseas. It's been just a horrendous amount of money. And finally, with this administration, they're getting to the bottom of it. Now, in this vein here, that the dismissal of federal workers, we're trying to work through that with the administration on keeping the people we need versus the ones that are really been proved to be superfluous. And my understanding of it is that firefighters are supposed to be exempt from that. So if we're missing the mark on that, then we need to get that information and get that back to the administration, that actual firefighters on the ground, we're trying to retain them, trying to keep them. We're trying to actually get better pay for them in the process as well.
Mm-hmm. So what some of the emails and stuff that we've been seeing online, they're saying that firefighters, they're saying that they're exempt, like you said, but a lot of the roles that are being fired or they rescinded their offers, they're stuff like archaeologists and like scientists, but they also hold firefighting titles where they can go out if needed. So those roles are being taken away. California forests are majority owned by the federal government. What do you have to say to your constituents who are concerned about a lack of firefighters that the freeze may cause as fire season approaches?
Well, we want to boost that up anyway. We want to have more firefighters and, as I mentioned, better pay for them so we can retain them. And so that's, the administration and the folks involved have said that's not their goal, is reducing firefighters. So again, if we're missing the mark on that, we need to know that and be able to focus again on having that crew be as strong as we can, have that force be as strong as possible.
Mm-hmm. And how can you guys know that? What are you guys doing to look into it?
Well, we need to have that feedback that folks can provide us. So if we have individual firefighters say, hey, I've been laid off, then we need to know that. And so we accept that information. Now, when you're talking about multifaceted ones that maybe are ologists, archaeologists, things like that, that might be a little different category that the federal government might be looking at differently, the administration. But I think what we're also talking about too are those that are very early in having been hired, that less than 1 year category. And so, but these are some of the folks we want to retain. I'm more concerned about upper levels that we try and get things out of them to get to do the management of the forest, and they just give us a bureaucratic runaround. Maybe those are the ones that we need to be thinning out,
Definitely, but what if it's the people on the lower levels who are ultimately getting the repercussions?
Because of civil service laws, those are the only ones that can be dismissed, it seems. And so part of the issue is that if we want to target this better and have, the administration wants people they can work with, and you have the ones that are always entrenched and dug in that don't want to work with an administration that they may disagree with. They call that the deep state, I guess. That we need to have some changes to civil service laws so that you have people that are focused on the mission and not so much. I mean, we went through this COVID era in the last 4 years, and you still have people in Washington D.C. that don't want to go back to work. They fight, oh, I don't want to go to the office. Like, well, that's kind of the job. All the other working people in the normal world have to show up for their jobs. They might have some arrangement for work from home, and there is room for that. But when you have 92% or so, as they say in DC, that aren't showing up for work, then how's that equitable for taxpayers and other people that have to really make it, in the real economy?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So would you be able to back that your constituents will not be negatively impacted by the results of this freeze?
We're having concerns about, again, if there's wildland firefighters that are being dismissed, and we need to get a fix on that, as well as other USDA issues, some with our conservation service like that. And so we've been having that discussion in the Ag Committee and have been feeding this information to the administration like, hey, we get where you're trying to go, but some of these folks here are actually helping us get the mission done. The president is very concerned about fire safety and having managed forests and such, has been given, his comments and input on the LA situation. And so we need to keep the focus on making government more efficient, as people ask us to do, but also keeping the people on hand that are getting the work done for us. And there's a lot of bureaucracy in DC, and even reaching out to the local level doesn't seem to get much produced for people when it takes so long to get a forestry permit or get any other kind of permit. And so I watch all the water going down the river right now, and we can hardly get an answer for that, as water is going to be needed for the crops this year, for people in the urban areas, and everyone. California needs water, and I'm concerned that we're wasting so much water right now, and the bureaucracy won't hardly talk to us about it. They just say, oh, we got our rules and this and that. And so government needs to be responsible to the elected legislators that are directly responsible to the people.
Definitely. I know another area of concern is, I don't know if you'll know this or not, but do you know whether the Social Security Administration employees may face firings under the Dodge-Trump administration?
I'm not sure about that, but what they are finding in Social Security is a lot of bad contracts for things that are really not helpful for the mission of delivering the service to Social Security recipients. And as you've seen, phantom Social Security recipients anyway, you've seen them that over 100, 120, 150, 200-year-olds, and people that don't even have Social Security numbers somehow receiving a benefit. These checks are being sent somewhere, these electronic transactions are being sent somewhere. So I think it has been a very effective and ultimate moment here that we're finding this stuff like that and addressing it, because we want Social Security to go farther for the people that are deserving, that have paid into it, and not get lost for people that don't even exist. How could they exist when you have people on the books that are 240 years old? And so we have a giant problem there as far as delivering the service. We need to make sure that they're viable so people get the benefit they've paid into. And that would extend to the IRS as well. IRS is supposed to be issuing refunds for people, like take Paradise. They need to have those that have paid in on the PG&E settlement and got taxed for it. We got a bill passed to make it wasn't taxable recently. And so we want them to be sure to get those processed. So we want the federal employees we do have to be there to be able to serve and take care of the people's needs. And if there's deadwood at upper levels or ones that are doing jobs that just aren't fitting in with what the administration and what we believe, this DEI stuff and other social justice, things like that, that's not helping anybody. It's just creating more problems and creating more lawsuits.
So back to the Social Security, if this did happen, so if employees were fired under that freeze, could it lead to delays in Social Security payments or not getting all the benefits they're eligible for? What are the repercussions of that?
Well, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's see if there people are actually going to be let go with that, because I don't want to speculate on something that hasn't necessarily happened. But we want to be sure we define that as Social Security is audited, as it's looked into, that when it comes to the employee situation, we have effective employees that are taking care of the people's needs. And if we start hearing that there's problems, then that's one more thing we got to take back to the administration and say, hey, we got an issue here. We get the overall picture that we're trying to reduce the size of government, because we're $2 trillion upside down every year since the end of the beginning of the COVID era, and during the Biden administration with this legislation that's been passed that has just put us in a situation. The deficit used to be well under $1 trillion a year, and now it's just unmanageable, and it's growing by leaps and bounds, our national debt. We got to get a handle on that, because if interest rates go up much higher, managing that debt will pretty much devour most aspects of the federal budget, including things that people really care about, keeping our military deployed, keeping the other important programs that people depend on locally. We won't have the budget for it because we're managing debt, and so we have to do this. And so the efforts of DOGE have largely overturned a lot of really wasteful spending. USAID is doing things that are completely inappropriate, and now we're finding that out. In Congress we would have oversight hearings, but during that 2 or 3 hour window we can have a bureaucrat sitting there and not really give us an answer, or they say, well, we'll get back to you, and then no real action. So we have people on the inside now, and that's where the president has appointed people to get in that spot get in those places and find what's wrong, and then we'll have a better running program that people actually will be able to utilize with more efficiency. That's what it's about, is efficiency.
And I know you said you don't want to speculate, but your district is made up a lot
Yes.
of older constituents who may be worried about something happening to their Social Security. Is there anything you can say to them right now, just based off of what you know, to maybe put their minds at ease?
Well, no one wants to harm the Social Security system on either side of the aisle, and where you find inappropriate payments are being made, I'm glad we're finding this out, because that just takes it away from people that should be receiving from what they've paid in. And so with that efficiency, as well as the size of the bureaucracy, we need to pare it down to where people are having their needs met. And I'm sure you can find much in the bureaucracy when they've been worried all about, what's our climate change angle, what's our DEI angle, and social justice and things like that. What does that really actually mean? It means people being pitted against each other, where largely there isn't a problem, by spending so much time on that instead of doing the actual service. I want people to be able to walk into the Social Security office in their community and be helped immediately, and not have so much devoted to other things that don't actually help them. So if we start hearing that that isn't being met because of layoffs, then we will take action on that. So we'll need to hear that from folks if they find out, or from employees themselves, that it isn't the upper level folks that are being let go, but folks that are actually doing the work on the ground. That's what we want to know.
Definitely. And then I'm going to move over a bit, get more into immigration and border security. So with the debate over immigration policy heating up, what steps do you believe the federal government should take to secure the U.S.-Mexico border, while also addressing the needs of agriculture and labor markets that rely on immigrant workers?
Well, we're having great success right now on getting more control over the border. The atmosphere, the attitude being portrayed by the administration has basically shut it down to a trickle. When the Biden administration is saying green light, everybody come in, you're getting 10, 11, 12,000 per day penetrating our border. Now that's down to a trickle, like 200-300 a day that are trying to do that. And so all we've ever asked is go through a legal process of applying for whether you want a student visa or a tourist visa, a work visa, any of those things. There's a legal process. And then the individual is much better off in a legal situation, instead of having come across or abusing the asylum system and saying, oh, I'm here because of oppression, when all they're really looking for is an economic opportunity. And so we want to straighten that out, as far as whether it's ag workers or others that are being asked for by these industries, H-2A for ag or H-1B for high tech and such. But we also want to emphasize that American jobs need to be held by Americans too. And so agriculture folks are really concerned about this right now, and I want to be able to convey to the administration. We actually had legislation 2 different times that passed the House that I was part of, to get ag workers to a legal status, not necessarily just handing them citizenship or all the public benefits that people pay into, but a legal status so they can be here and do the work. It'll involve them having to go through a process of being vetted and make sure they're here at least in good standing, they don't have a criminal record, and basically like an e-verify process, as well as if they came here illegally, they need to pay at least some form of restitution to show that, yeah, we did it wrong. But the culpability also lies a lot with the federal government for allowing it to happen so long too, and just looking the other way. So there's a way to retain the workers we have if they've gone through a process. They don't have to be exported, but get them to a legal status with restitution. And if we find that's not enough of a workforce, then we had provisions in the legislation we did to say the Secretary of Ag can say, hey, we need X amount of additional new workers coming through a verified process, coming across the border, if that be the case, in a legal fashion, going through the ports of entry that they should be going through, instead of just coming across. And that's a lot better for the worker to have a legal status, instead of having to wonder if they're going to be picked up, or if there's gang people that know, like, hey, they don't have really any legal standing. They can go mug them, they can go rob them from maybe their wages or what have you. They can abuse them in a lot of ways. And so what we have had up to this point is that for people entering into the country and having to go with these coyotes and pay mass amounts of money, that's not humane, especially for women and kids that are subject to so much violence and horrific things I don't even want to say on the air here, that are part of it. I've been to the border. I've seen the stuff on the ground. I've seen where, you know, women have to take birth control pills and things because they know it's going to be so bad that they're going to be abused to come across the border. You tell me how that's humane versus what we're trying to do.
So you talked about getting a legal status. On that note, do you support comprehensive immigration reform that includes a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants?
We already have those.
But especially in agriculture, or do you believe enforcement should take priority over that?
All the above. We have a process of enforcement that seems to be working really well under this administration. And we also have a process to apply for worker status that just simply requires you go through the portal, you apply, and I think there'll be a welcoming group in agriculture that wants the workers. And so we don't have to have comprehensive immigration reform because we already have laws on the books. If they're being adhered to, if they're being enforced and not made just a mockery of, such as everybody claiming asylum. You know, our asylum law is probably what needs to be altered somewhat so it really means that for people that are truly oppressed, you know, in a particular country that we see and agree probably should be helped for a certain amount of time. And then under asylum, it's supposed to be a particular term, a particular amount of time that they have to be here, and then maybe hopefully things are stabilized in that country that they can go back. It doesn't mean permanent status.
But do you think that process should be more streamlined?
Absolutely. It's a terrible process for how to become a citizen in this country, for how long it takes. You have to, in a lot of cases, hire attorneys and pay lots of money. It should be very cut and dried. Like with any permit you would seek from the government, it should be easy to do, and it's up to us to decide, well, how many new citizens do we want each year? You know, pick a number, see what the country can absorb. Do they bring a skill? Do they bring a set that actually enhances our country? That used to be standard years ago, is that people brought a skill set, they had sponsors. It wasn't just willy-nilly, hey, come in and then they can get on our benefit system. It needs to be something of what do they have to offer this country, and will they offer loyalty to our country? Now, people that go through a legal process, and I've seen them, I've been at the ceremonies where their citizenship has been conferred. These are pretty grateful folks. They're pretty excited to be Americans and have gone through, you know, a bit of an education process as they go through the tests and such. The ones that come across illegally, I think they want part of that too, but they're either subject to really extreme violent situations, or sometimes they come here to protest this country, and that doesn't help us.
Okay. Speaking about agriculture, agriculture is a cornerstone of your district's economy, but water scarcity, like you were talking about before, is a growing concern. How do you propose managing California's water resources to ensure farmers and communities in your district have enough water while also considering environmental needs?
Build storage, okay? We have an opportunity to raise Shasta Dam and gain 630,000 more acre feet when it's full. We have an opportunity to build Sites Reservoir just down the road here, so 80 or 100 miles, and gain 1.5 million acre feet. And those are just being slow walked right now by government, by people trying to drag down the process. Environmentalists always sue over it. And so, I mean, I'm appalled by the amount of water that's leaving Lake Shasta right now, going down the Sacramento River. It's flooding out areas of Glenn County where you can't use the highways and local roads because they're letting so much water out. And this is, we're almost into March here. And if they keep releasing down to the level we think they're going to, the lake will be short 1.2 million acre feet. And where's that going to come from during March or April? Can we count on that lake filling up? Maybe, maybe not. Because you can't judge the rainfall and the snowpack. So they've created a lot of space in the lake for flood control and having that, and I appreciate that. But they've gone probably, in my opinion, 400,000 acre feet beyond that. And that's 400,000 acre feet the farmers in perhaps Glenn or Colusa County aren't going to get, as well as San Joaquin Valley, which is the breadbasket for so much important food grown in this country and consumed by Americans, and the resulting economic damage that's going to be. The inability, the loss of groundwater recharge, which they need so desperately down there, that results from farming and from filling those aquifers with the recharge zones. They could be doing that. They could also be filling San Luis Reservoir, which at this moment is still 1/4 down or maybe 20% down. We're not doing that. The water's going out to the Pacific Ocean that's leaving Shasta Dam, that's leaving Oroville Dam and others. And that's just infuriating to me that they're using 50-year-old manuals to decide how to manage the lake instead of using, you have weather reports here at the station that can dynamically show over a period of time, like, we don't see any rain on the horizon for 2 or 3 weeks, therefore maybe we shouldn't let the water out of the lake. If we see rain coming, we figure out, assess how much rain that might be, and do we have to do something to make more space behind the dam? Probably not. I believe they've let out 400,000 more acre feet than is necessary at this point, and that's a lot of water.
Definitely. So you cited infrastructure being a part of the solution. Now, what's the funding look like towards that? How are you going to?
We've worked on funding in DC for Sites Reservoir to help move that process along. We've had an initial round of funding that under the first Trump administration on Lake Shasta raise, and so we want to continue that effort. But the voters in California also approved a bond several years ago that would actually build water storage as part of it. And so the California Water Commission set aside nearly $1 billion for Sites Reservoir, but here it sits many years later, having not even started construction because it's one excuse after another by bureaucracy. Right now they have to sort through, well, we need to establish the water rights. Now, Governor Newsroom stopped at my office here a couple of weeks ago, and I appreciated that conversation. I asked him, would you look at what the Water Commission and the Water Control Board are doing, and can we hasten that process of getting the water right established and getting this permit process done and start the construction? And he agreed with me largely. I said, why don't you and I will be out there with a golden shovel, say this September, starting the work, as we do a groundbreaking, instead of waiting 1 or 2 more years and losing an opportunity. We're already many years behind. Had Sites Reservoir existed, we probably would have filled it 3 or 4 times just in the last 7, 8 years. We could fill Shasta. Right now, Shasta wouldn't be dumping water because it would have that additional flood storage capacity. It wouldn't need to be dumping nearly as much water as it's been doing the last 2 or 3 weeks if it had that additional 600,000 feet of space. But the bureaucracy just goes, well, la-di-da, we'll get around to it. And it's just maddening because real people are suffering in agriculture, in urban areas, as they're being told more and more you have to cut back your water use to 50 gallons per day or even 42. For what purpose? You have to get rid of your yard because we're having tens of millions of acre feet just going out to the ocean, not being captured. That's what's going on. It's just going out the delta, not being captured because we're not building the storage up here or pumping it into storage farther south.
You cite bureaucracy as a reason that this has been held up. What exactly do you mean by that?
The threat of lawsuit or the slowness with which they respond to, why is it taking 2 years to establish a water right? The water, for Sites Reservoir, basically they're going to be using excess overflow water during these high flows, right? They could be pulling water out of the Sacramento River right now. That was the other day going out at about 64,000 cubic feet per second. And the 2 pumping systems that are there combined would be only pulling 4,000 CFS and pumping it through the existing canal system, then up into Sites Reservoir, okay? You would never miss that 4,000 CFS, but they're all worried, oh my gosh, it might affect fish, might affect this or that. It's just flowing out to the ocean. You would never miss that 4,000 CFS during these high flows, even today's high flows, And so we could be filling those lakes, except we can't get the infrastructure built because now it's going to be the environmentalist groups' turn to sue over this or over that. And I hope the people of California get fed up with this soon. They're getting fed up in Southern California with that sort of thing, which led at least partially to the great big devastating fire they had in Pacific Palisades and in the other areas. And so we suffer with it all the time here with the fires in this zone here, like the west side of Redding on the Carr fire, the Camp Fire that took out most of Paradise, and Greenville's taken out by the Dixie Fire as well as Canyon Dam, and just time after time. Now, unfortunately, other people are having to learn that firsthand too with litigation and environmental groups. They don't care about people, they just care about burnishing their accounts with more lawsuit money, and it's really maddening. So people need to push back. We need to change some of these laws and change some of the politicians that are allowing this to happen.
Speaking of the wildfires, California is facing more frequent and intense wildfires, many of which impact your district. How do you plan to address funding for fire prevention and recovery efforts?
We need the industry to be working hand in hand. We need loggers to be able to be out there helping us so we can recoup value from these forest lands instead of just thinking the federal government is going to buy its way out of it. We don't have enough money in the federal government to do the massive amount of forest management need to be done. So we need to cut trees that are going to be utilized by people for wood products, paper products, what have you. For some reason, we're the #1 importer, the USA, of wood products of any Western country. Why are we importing it when we're burning it right outside the studio here practically? And so as a member of the Ag Committee, and I chair the subcommittee on forestry, we're pushing hard to have much more of this product utilized, put the people to work in our backyard, have the employment here, have the tax receipts that come from forest products, help our people in our backyard. We have to pass a bill each year called the Secure Rural Schools Act in order to replace the money that used to come from timber receipts that the local government got to take in that helps their roads and helps their schools. And so a lady just came up to me at a restaurant in Corning yesterday and thanked me for running that Secure Rural Schools bill. But wouldn't we all rather have our forests produce that income instead of having to go to the U.S. Treasury and every year beg for it once again? And our urban neighbors probably don't understand why we're having to beg for money to go to local schools and roads. When I explain to them it's because we need forestry and making the money from there, well, they may or may not agree because they're afraid to cut trees in the urban areas because they want to have a 100% environmental record.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to national security and defense. Okay. With global tensions rising, what role do you see for California's military installations and defense contractors in strengthening national security, especially in the context of China's growing influence?
We have very important installations in the West, obviously, and in our own district we have the Sierra Army Depot, which is a good facility that, you know, if it was to be boosted up with more equipment and personnel, it's ready. It's ready if we need it. And it's a good West Coast one, which is important. And to the south end of the district, of course, we have Beale Air Force Base, which its mission is extremely important as far as surveillance and reconnaissance with the aircraft that are there. Manned aircraft and more unmanned aircraft are coming in, and also seeking a new mission that will bring even more personnel and ability. And it's important because we'll have these facilities on the West Coast instead of farther inland, which if there's a issue in the Pacific, we'll have that much quicker response, you know, because you never know what China's going to do in the South China Sea with Taiwan. You know, Japan's concerned about that. They have holdings there. So China's kind of playing it cool right now, especially with the Trump administration, but it's important that we have these West Coast installations. You know, we still have Travis Air Force Base. We have many in California, and that they're a state of readiness, and that we do the proper thing funding-wise in D.C. You know, we're talking about, are we going to get a budget passed with the proper appropriation bills, or are we going to do another continuing resolution? I don't like continuing resolutions because they don't really give us any autonomy or any actual thought into how we're spending. It's just like stamp and, you know, buy 3 months, 6 months or more. And, you know, there's some chatter about, are we going to have to do another CR, as we call it? And that's just a non-thinking way of doing business. You know, sometimes we're forced to do it because we've run out of time, but we need to have an appropriations process. The CRs actually negatively affect the military. They're harmful towards our military readiness and the personnel that we have on the basis of, you know, getting paid properly, or if we're getting new and updated equipment. It just basically takes those ideas off the table because we're just doing a stopgap measure.
Mm-hmm. So how do you balance supporting national defense with addressing the pressing needs of your district, such as rural infrastructure and agriculture support?
Well, a lot of times they go hand in hand. Again, the area around Beale benefits from Beale's existence there, employment-wise, and the local infrastructure. The more we can do over on the Sierra Army Depot could help enhance the highway system there, for example. We want to do some more work on Highway 395 up there to have it be a safer road, be able to handle more traffic. If all that's happening concurrently, then we'll have a stronger transportation system up there, more employment, stronger local economy, and all the above. So these things do work well together. People like when the bases are nearby and they're fully, you know, employed and fleshed out, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So I want to move on to gun rights and public safety, just because we've seen some shootings happen here in the Northstate, maybe not particularly in your district, but as a representative from a district where many are strong supporters of Second Amendment rights, how do you propose balancing gun rights with the need for addressing gun violence in communities?
When we have a system of justice that rewards bad behavior, letting criminals out, you've seen how many pardons came out of the Biden administration at the end for some hardened criminals. We're seeing under Governor Newsom an effort to continue to release worse and worse criminals from prison. He got rid of the death penalty for the most heinous crimes. Those folks are all being downgraded to lifers and being moved into other prisons and such. So we're not sending a signal that we are against crime in this state. Federally, we are, thankfully, to President Trump and the team he's put together with the Attorney General and so many others that are enforcing our border. And so gun control is never the answer, because the people that would be controlled are the ones that are the law-abiding citizens that buy these and own these. The ones that need controlled are the ones that are getting caught time and time again and not being put away for a long time.
So what steps do you think Congress should take to prevent gun violence in light of the mass shootings across the U.S.?
Well, first of all, what is this term gun violence? A gun is an inanimate object. It could be like baseball bat violence or screwdriver violence. It comes down to the violent individual wielding whatever weapon is available to them in the situation. So I don't think more gun laws are going to do that, because take city of Chicago. They have some of the most strenuous gun laws of anywhere in the country, and so probably many of your other blue cities, for example, have them, and their crime is the worst. When you find people that are in areas, rural areas, or some of the maybe smaller big cities, so to speak, that have strong gun rights and gun advocacy for people to own them, you see that itself is a deterrent, and people don't try it. People with high weapon carrying ability, concealed weapons or others, you're seeing those areas aren't tried too often by bad guys. And so more gun law, there's plenty of gun laws already on the books. There's plenty of ways to enforce. When you find that the Department of Justice in the past is not even following up on people trying to purchase weapons over the counter, and the red flag goes up and say, so-and-so here tried to buy a gun, in 9 out of 10 cases they don't even follow up and see, why are you, a person who's a felon or on parole, out there trying to do a gun purchase? Maybe that's a violation of parole. Maybe that's a situation they should be held accountable for. So we're not even enforcing those laws. And then when we downgrade laws where use a gun to go to jail, that used to be popular, they've downgraded the sentencing on that. They used to be enhanced sentencing, and they take that away in California, so there's not even a extra disincentive that if you're packing a gun to go rob a liquor store, maybe there's no intention to shoot anybody, but you pull that gun out, that's intimidating. And so if you're using that in a crime and they've taken away the sentence enhancement on that, which the state legislature has done, the Public Safety Committee, I call it the Public Endangerment Committee, because they're always downgrading felonies to something lower because they want to let people out sooner. So that's where the improvements need to be made.
Okay. I think those are all the questions I have for you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
You
got me on a
nice
roll. I
meeting you.
might have got a little intense at the end.
It's all good.